So we are looking at Built to Last. The book is by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras. And maybe just a bit about us, Inspire. We say we are friends who have come together to learn from each other, sharpen each other, and spur each other on to the best version of ourselves. So that remains to be our mission, that as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And we continue to uphold respect for each other. And we say that this particular forum is non-political and also not for self-promotion. Even though we started a sister group for business, which then is for self-promotion. We read one book at a time as a group. And the current book is Built to Last, which is authored by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras. And I'm your host tonight, Jeremy. Now, so the book starts by asking, which factors separate the few success stories that become truly great from all others? And one of the things that I was thinking as I read this is, of course, the book has a strong inclination towards enterprise. You know, it is largely written through the lens of businesses and what separates successful businesses from businesses that don't make it that big. But then as I'm reading, I'm thinking, well, in as much as this relates to businesses, I think it as well has application to individual lives, as we will see. Of course, we cannot discount the application that goes strictly to businesses, but I think when it comes to principles, we say there is a way that principles are scalable. In fact, earlier this week, we had a meeting where we were just discussing the fun fact that the structure of the atom resembles the structure of the solar system, you know, and the structure of the atom being, you have the nucleus at the center and energy levels around, the same way that you have the sun at the center and planets all around. In other words, you're talking of principles can apply at the least. If you're talking of principles, and principles we know are laws, that they can apply at the most minute level of detail, and they can apply at the most mega structure that you can think about. So which factors, I think that's what we will be exploring in this book, which factors separate the few success stories that become truly great from all others? So he asks, why did Masaru Ibuka's band of, he calls them renegade entrepreneurs, in a bombed out building rise to become Sony Corporation? And yeah, I think that's quite instructive when you think that their beginning, that's the beginning of Sony, was actually post Hiroshima. That is a call that definitely came to me, sorry. Let me just put the phone on silent. Okay, so why did Masaru Ibuka's band of renegade entrepreneurs, in other words, you could say, it might have appeared as if the odds were stacked against them, and yet they rose to become one of the most iconic multinationals of all time. So these are the things that we'll be exploring. And I think at the point of preface, it's more like a teaser. It is asking what I think are the right questions, which then lead us to insightful answers. So why was Thomas Watson able to take a small, insignificant company and turn it into what we know today is the mega corporation IBM? And in fact, when he talks about IBM, he says the way when he wrote the book, because I think this is, I don't know, I say this is the 10th edition, but like when he wrote the book the first time, and he quoted IBM as one of the success case studies, and then IBM started going down, he was ridiculed for it. But then it's as if he was saying, you know what? It's like time has proven me right that actually there are enduring principles and IBM was upholding them. So even when they appeared to be going down, they were actually able to come back because they were true to those factors, to those variables, to those principles. And he's asking what separated these cases from others that were just as lucky or even more fortunate. In other words, there are some that the odds were stacked in their favor and they didn't turn out as great. So what is that separates the small or the good from the great? What drives healthy and enduringly successful organizations? I think one of the thrust of this book is enduring success. It is lasting success. As I have noted in one of the slides, he says that you can be lucky for 5 or 10 years, but luck cannot take you for 5 or 10 decades. So he says that they studied companies of an approximate 100 years, and they found that one of the things they found is that most well-run organizations adopt the same basic practices and methods. And I think it goes without saying that, for example, when a certain theory or certain philosophy has been discovered, then it is deployed across many organizations. You know, I think a while back, for example, it was what is called Lean Six Sigma. Today, I think the big one is ESG, that's sustainability. Everyone is talking about sustainable finance, sustainable insurance, you know. So we are all trying to do the same basic practice. But then why is it that only a few become great? That's the question that we're looking to be able to answer in the course of studying this book. Why is it that a few select organizations rise beyond what you call mere success? All right. Why is it that they become truly great while others do not, even though they are applying or they have access to the exact same best practices? And for me, this is quite mind-provoking because, or thought-provoking because some of the books we've read in the past, for example, have talked about if you just find, I know, for example, we have said in this book club previously that success comes from identifying and living in harmony with the principles that govern the result you seek. So I find this thought-provoking in the sense that, are you saying that then I can find the principle, apply it, and not have the same result as my neighbor who has the same principle? I mean, that, in my opinion, is quite thought-provoking. So what variables, what factors, what principles separate those that become iconic from those that are in the mass of the mediocre? And they start giving us some of the answers. And one of the things is that the truly great enterprises think of themselves in a fundamentally different way from mediocre enterprises. This reminds me of the E-Myth that talks about, so E-Myth talks about stages of company development or organization development. That's infant, adolescent, and maturity. But then after, and that's like a spoiler if you've not read the E-Myth, because that's E-Myth by Michael Gerber. But then the thing that Michael Gerber says is that the interesting thing about mature companies is that they start thinking of themselves that way from day one. And every day they go to work, they are saying, we are measuring ourselves against, like against the mature version of ourselves. And I think that's why we were saying that principles apply across board, because, I mean, if it is about thinking, how you think about yourself, how you see yourself, Proverbs that's in the Bible says that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So if you're thinking of the best version of yourself, whether as an individual or as a company, it is a principle. And Jim and Jerry say that the businesses that make it big or that go on to greatness have a reason for being that goes beyond the mundane or the mercenary. A company that makes it to greatness has a reason for being that goes beyond the mundane or the mercenary. And the reason for being, I think you could rightly say there that start with why. Yeah, start with why and go beyond the mundane or the mercenary. And I thought it's interesting to define mercenary. So I looked it up and because, okay, of course there is a, well, anyway, let me not digress. That mercenary here is defined as primarily concerned with making money, even if it is at the expense of ethics. So other questions that they ask is, what is the role of mission in building enterprises? And the mission is the why, it's the purpose in building enterprises into great companies. And I think I'd mentioned this and thinking that I should be able to end around there so that I can also be able to allow others that you can live off luck 5 or 10 years, but you can't live off luck 5 or 10 decades. And then they start studying what they call the genetic twin studies, where they are looking at 2 companies in every era or in the same era that have the same exact market opportunities, the same exact demographics, technology shifts, socioeconomic trends, and yet they turn out differently over time. So for example, these 2 companies, General Electric and Westinghouse, founded at the turn of the century, that's 19th century, and 19th to 20th. So then both had access to capital. They had the same opportunity, like the same industry. It was the advent of electric power. But today one is an admired icon of influence, but the other one didn't attain the same stature. So why? And that's what we will be exploring over the next few weeks. Thank you very much. I would like to stop there and welcome comments, feedback. Karibuni sana.